Have you ever wondered if a single legal document could literally rewrite the psychological source code of an entire nation? I know, it sounds like a massive question, but today we're going to be looking at a piece of legislation that attempts to do exactly that. Because as you'll see, this isn't just about pouring concrete for some new statues. It operates as a profound psychological blueprint for a country.
Welcome to today's Explainer. We are going to be talking about July 1st, 2026. That's when the Ukrainian parliament passed draft law number 156030, which was a bill introduced by President Volodymyr Zelensky to establish a national pantheon in Kyiv. Now, just to be crystal clear right out of the gate, today we are going completely analytical. We're looking at this law strictly as a sociological and psychological artifact. We aren't here to take any political sides or evaluate state policies. Instead, we're going to neutrally unpack this fascinating mechanism of how a state actually goes about constructing its collective memory.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the nation's psychological code, then move through survival and sacred ground, raw power and rigid order, achievement and civil consensus, and finally, we'll wrap up by integrating the whole system.
Starting right off with Section 1, the nation's psychological code.
To really dissect this law and figure out how collective memory is built, we need a robust, neutral framework. And for us, that framework is spiral dynamics. It was developed in the mid-20th century by Clare Graves and later refined by Don Beck, and it is just a brilliant way to understand societal evolution. Spiral dynamics proposes that societies don't just change randomly. Actually, it's intense pressures, existential threats, and crises that force a society to leap into entirely new systems of thinking. And to make it easy to follow, each of these evolutionary stages is assigned a specific color.
But here is the trick to this theory. It's not just a staircase. It's actually a lot more like a matryoshka doll. Every complex, modern societal level must still contain, honor, and protect the primal evolutionary levels beneath it. Think about it. If you try to build a highly advanced society, but you completely ignore the fundamental, basic needs for survival and order, that whole beautifully constructed system is going to collapse at the absolute first sign of a real crisis.
So let's move on to Section 2, Survival and Sacred Ground, and see how this builds from the bottom up.
We are looking at the most primal foundation addressed in the legislation here, which represents the purple level of spiral dynamics. The law explicitly mandates the physical relocation of ashes to a memorial complex in Kyiv. Now, in the 21st century, that might sound a bit ancient, but from a psychological standpoint, it is absolutely crucial. Think about the monuments in your own city for a second. During times of massive upheaval, abstract laws just aren't enough. People need a physical, sacred space. Think of something like the Ground Zero Memorial in New York. This purple level fulfills a completely visceral, pre-rational need for territorial connection and a really deep emotional bond with the ancestors of the nation.
Ascending the spiral, we hit Section 3, raw power and rigid order. This covers the red and blue levels.
So, as we go up, the law has to negotiate some pretty violent realities. Enter the red level. The legislation explicitly includes categories to honor commanders of the UNR, the Ukrainian Galician Army, and the modern armed forces. By elevating military figures from various eras, the state is openly acknowledging red energy. It's that fierce, unyielding will to fight for survival. It's essentially an admission that, well, when diplomacy totally fails and international law breaks down, physical survival depends entirely on the raw, unpolished application of force by individuals who are willing to step up. When President Zelensky introduced the bill on June 28th, he stated that this move is vital for creating the foundations for long-term public unity in the future, emphasizing that state decisions have to be based on the recognition of reality. This perfectly bridges the gap. It takes that brutal physical reality of the red level and channels it directly toward the desire for long-term, unified, blue-level institutional order.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next stage, the blue level. If we look at the actual text of the law, the language is incredibly strict and bureaucratic. It dictates that the Pantheon is an object of absolute state property, funded exclusively by the national budget and managed by the Cabinet of Ministers. There are no private initiatives or GoFundMe campaigns going on here. This is the blue level of order in action, where the state asserts a complete monopoly on the process just to prevent societal chaos and to stabilize the collective memory into concrete, unbreakable rules.
The blue level is also completely obsessed with continuity. The law explicitly links the leaders of Kyiv and Rus, the Cossack state, the UNR, and modern Ukraine. It's basically attempting to artificially stitch centuries of disparate history into one continuous, legitimate line. But remember, blue is also about strict compliance with the rules. Notice the caveat they threw in for modern presidents. They're included, sure, excluding those who are impeached. If you violate the foundational constitutional contract, you are banished from the Pantheon. The system aggressively protects its own rules.
Next up is Section 4, Achievement and Civil Consensus, where we shift into the orange and green levels.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the stark contrast. Right next to 10th century warlords, the law mandates the inclusion of modern Nobel laureates in science and literature as well as world-class cultural figures. This right here is the orange level. It signals a huge ambition to compete on the global stage through intellect, rationality, and innovation. It sends a very clear message that the nation values not just the raw force that defended it, but the minds that propel it forward into the future.
Then we see the green level emerge. Instead of the cabinet of ministers just dictating a design top-down behind closed doors, the law explicitly mandates an open international architectural competition. It also makes a point to honor those who contributed to the development of civil society. This totally embraces green values like pluralism, transparency, horizontal community ties, and consensus building. It acknowledges that a truly sacred national space has to be shaped by the dialogue of the society it actually represents.
And finally, Section 5, integrating the whole system. Let's look at the yellow level.
Looking at how this all maps out, it's honestly like assembling an Avengers superhero team. You are literally bringing together ancient warlords, strict bureaucrats, genius scientists, and community organizers all into one room. Under normal circumstances, these worldviews would clash heavily. I mean, imagine a 10th century warlord trying to compromise with a modern bureaucrat. But the law harmonizes them through what spiral dynamics calls yellow-level systemic thinking. It recognizes that every single layer is absolutely necessary. Without the purple roots, the blue structure has no soul. Without the red defenders, the orange scientists have no safety. The entire system needs every single color to prevent a total collapse.
So the crucial point we should take away is this. Law number 15360 is essentially a masterclass in synchronizing every string of societal consciousness. It builds a fortress of memory that deeply respects the primal past while simultaneously reaching for a global future. But it does leave us with one final, profound question to think about. The spiral of human evolution never actually stops. As society inevitably faces new crises and evolves into unknown, future colors, will this framework, laid down in 2026, be elastic enough to hold the unimaginable heroes of tomorrow? It's definitely something to keep in mind as we watch history being written. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.